This is Michael Govier from the Is It Safe podcast, and you are now clear for communication with Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes, and while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 290, Caveman Movie Review. Chris McBrien here, along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week we're going to review Caveman from 1981. We're going way back. This one is with Ringo Starr and Shelley Long. It was my suggestion, but before we get to that, anything new in the world of pop culture for you, my friend Derek?
Yeah, I had a chance to go to the movie theater.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
always like that. So.
Well, it's that time of year where they're like rolling out some movies that could be decent, or at least they're big franchise movies, things that you kind of want to see in the theater. So we had a chance to go out and watch Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And so this is the fourth movie in the new Planet of the Apes franchise. And
when you say new Planet of the Apes franchise, I just want to get this straight, because there was the one back in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. There was the original film, which was quite good, actually. And then they did all these like kind of stupid sequels into the 70s. And then did they come out with like a series of ones with, was it Tim Burton?
He did one.
Okay,
and it
one.
Flopped, so they never did any more.
And then after a period of time, then they came out with a third incarnation. And this one now has 4 sequels, or this is a fourth one.
This would be the fourth one in the, we'll call it a franchise, I suppose is probably the best way to think of it. Yeah, the first one in this new series is called Rise of the Planet of the Apes from 2011. And then Dawn of the Planet of the Apes 2014, War for the Planet of the Apes 2017. And those 3 work as a sequel. There's like a story arc that is loosely carried through those 3. And then there's a very satisfying ending. But of course, why would you stop making the movies when they're cash cows? So they, or in this case, cash apes. So they decided to continue this franchise. There you go. Yeah. See, you were paying attention. But in any case, no, we went out, we watched it. I really liked it. It was a little long. It's 2 hours and 25 minutes. It's maybe a little longer than it needed to be. But when a movie's good and it's long, I don't really mind. And I found this one was pretty decent. And I heard someone reviewing it, and they said, well, if you think of this new franchise as having 4 films, the first one, I think everyone would agree, is the best one. It's the origin story, the reboot of how and why we've got Planet of the Apes. And then this new one, this fourth one, I think is probably the best of the bunch after that first one. Like, it's better than part 2 and part 3. So, and I would agree with that. Not that I thought 2 and 3 were terrible, but I think this one really did a good job. The special effects, oh my God, they were so good. You literally thought you were watching real apes on the screen. It was just so, the technology's advanced so much. And I mean, we've seen a lot of movies with some terrible special effects, but man, they really nailed it with this one. It looked fantastic. And again, lots of action, lots of interesting things that they were, when they use the digital technology, you can have these apes doing ridiculous things. And no, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I would recommend it. If you've seen these new rebooted films and you even have a marginal enjoyment of them, this was a good way to kill 2.5 hours in the theater.
Question for you.
Sure.
I always like to compare things back. So how do these ones compare to the original? You can take those sequels and throw them out the window. Even if you just go back to the original. How do all these new ones stand up to the original? Which one do you like better?
Well, I mean, the original is sort of its time, and whereas with this new sort of imagining, they've modernized it, and I think they did a really good job of coming up with reasons within the movie for why things happen that are believable enough that as a moviegoer, you're like, okay, I can buy that. I can suspend my disbelief that yes, this has happened. And like I said, the effects in these movies have been fantastic, and that's a big part of it. We were joking about it after. We're like, could you imagine if they still looked like they looked in the original Planet of the Apes with the makeup and like those silly lips over top?
Roddy McDowell in the ape mask.
It would look pretty ridiculous, but no, it looked fantastic. The look of this movie is just so good. So. Yeah. And then I had a chance. So unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to watch too many other things, but I did have a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
What did you learn about the world this time, my friend?
So I learned all about skateboarder Tony Hawk.
Oh, yeah.
And the documentary is on HBO. It's called Tony Hawk Until the Wheels Fall Off. And it's essentially a biography on Tony Hawk and who he is and how he came to fame and notoriety and how, as a professional skateboarder, he has had a pretty lucrative career. Obviously, it's had its ups and downs, and just it was very interesting to see that sort of California skateboard culture in the 80s, which was when Tony Hawk was first starting out. And they had a lot of video footage of some of those older things in not the 70s, but in the 80s. Because you got to think, by then people had like camcorders and stuff. And being from Southern California, most of these kids were from pretty affluent families. So they had access to these tools to do videos and stuff. And it's really interesting to go back and just see how it was a real time capsule to just watch this and go, yeah, that's clearly the 80s. You could tell from how people looked, how people talked, what the haircuts looked like, even just like the smoking and the things they were eating and drinking, the packaging from McDonald's. Like, it was just interesting to see these little quirks that while you're watching this, you realize like this is real life. This really happened. And you're getting to see these kids become, professional skateboarders. And it's crazy though. Like, skateboarding is now an Olympic event. It's going to be in the Olympics this summer. And this it all started way back here in the 80s when it was like becoming a big thing. And then obviously in like the 90s, they started with the X Games and things like that. But no, it was crazy. And I mean, I know who Tony Hawk is. I know he's a professional skateboarder. He's obviously probably the most well-known skateboarder ever. In large part because his name was attached to a series of very successful video games, which he made so much money off of. But no, it was just interesting to learn about him and how he got into it and how his family supported him and didn't support him and how he got along with some people but not others. And even they talked to a lot of other skateboarders who were his peers at the time, some of whom couldn't stand him and some of whom treated him, like they were his brother. So it was a lot of really interesting personalities in this documentary. It was, again, though, I thought it was a little long. It was 2 hours and 10 minutes. I saw it on HBO, and I had to watch it in 2 sittings. I just was like, wow, is there really enough in this guy's life that we need 2 hours and 10 minutes? And yeah, I think we need about 2 hours. There was a lot of ups and downs. Again, no pun intended with the skateboarding, but no, it was interesting. I'm not a huge fan of skateboarding in general. Like, I tried it as a young person and sucked at it. So I thought, well, skateboarding's dumb. But, I went back. I could certainly appreciate the athleticism that goes into it, especially now that I'm, older and looking back at what these kids were doing and just like, holy crap. Like, I can't believe what they're getting away with on these skateboards. This is amazing. Mm-hmm. And Tony Hawk's a little older than I am. He's 56. So when they made this documentary 2 years ago, he was 54. And you should see this guy still just outshining some of these young kids. Like, the things he's capable of doing on this skateboard are just unbelievable. So anyway, Tony Hawk, Until the Wheels Fall Off. It's on HBO. If this sounds like something you might like, take a look. It was quite good.
Very cool. I got something for you. This literally happened just before I came into the studio to record the show. So I was getting ready to come in and I get a text from my good buddy, Chris Welsh. So long story short, Derek, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but just as a recap, I started off podcasting back in the day with a fantasy baseball podcast. I started in January of 2012. I was like a trailblazer, for lack of a better term, because at the time there was no independent fantasy baseball podcast to speak of. There was, ESPN and CBS and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden I came along and I was doing this show and it became very, very popular. And then, it went on for a number of years. We were nominated for awards and all this stuff. And I made this whole community and I met all these people and it was really, really great. And it sort of paved the way for lots of independent podcasters to go into that space. And it was great. So I'm texting with my buddy and he's like, dude, you're still so well revered in this fantasy baseball world. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, man, we call you the OG. You are the OG of fantasy baseball podcasting. And I'm like, dude, the OG, I actually wrote a song called I'm the OG. And so for Chris Welsh, I'm playing it right now.
Well, let me see. It ain't what you think. When it comes to me, it's something different. Don't you see? I am the OG, and it is me. O is easy. It stands for old. G is not for gangster. It stands for kind of told. OG is old guy, and that is me. I am the OG. I'm the OG. Yeah, you know me. Yeah, I'm the OG. Yeah, you know me. I'm PHAT. Yeah, you know me. I like old movies. I'm so groovy. Yeah, you know me. I got no groupies. Yeah, you know me. But I'm the OG. Yeah, you know me. Yeah, I'm the OG. All the
That's me. I'm the OG, the old guy.
Nice.
Not the original gangster. I'm the old guy because I also do this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
So I figured since we're reviewing the film Caveman, I should do a caveman joke this week. Only makes sense, right?
Sure.
All right. So Derek, why didn't Mrs. Caveman let her husband go out at night alone?
I have no idea.
Because he was going out clubbing. Get it?
That was pretty good.
Oh, yes. He liked it. Yes, I like it. I've got a can, so I'm opening this up right now.
And I'm a girl drink drunk, so I'm having a Pop Shop cream soda.
Oh, that's a good one.
That has Chris's stamp all over it. Yeah, okay. Oh.
You mean The Phantom Menace?
Oh.
I'm not a fan of the prequels.
Okay, fair enough.
I used to be a somewhat successful podcaster in the world of fantasy baseball.
Go Ducks!
Oh man.
All right, so it was over to me this week. I went with Caveman from 1981. Before we started really dive into that, I always like to ask you, I don't know when the last time was that you saw this movie, but you watched it this week. Initial thoughts on watching it this week, just as a high level overview.
So I had seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess it would have been in the very early 80s. So if the movie came out in 81, home videos were we probably had our VCR or even the Laserdisc player probably in like 82, 83. So I would think that's probably about let's say 1983. I would have been probably 8 or 9 years old. That's the last time I saw this.
Okay, good. So it's been a long time.
But I was surprised at how much I remembered and how much of it was just sort of like nostalgic. It was like as scenes were playing out, I'm like, oh, this is the scene where this is going to happen. And then it would. And I was like, I'm watching it with my adult eyes and going, man, this is so dumb and so cheesy and so stupid, but I'm still enjoying the ride and smiling as I'm watching it and laughing at the dumbest things, in large part because I remembered so much of it from being a little kid. And I like, my wife asked me, she's like, oh, what are you watching for the show this week? I go, Caveman. She's like, I've never heard of it. So I was telling her about it. She's like, that sounds stupid. And then I said, well, I'm going to watch it. I'll let you know. And then she asked me this morning, she said, did you watch the movie last night? Yeah. How was it? And so I was telling her and she goes, it sounds dumb. And I was like, yeah, you would have hated it. But
I didn't make my wife watch it either.
Yeah, it was sort of both exactly what I was expecting, but not quite what I was expecting, just because it had been so many years. I had certain things in my mind that I was like, is this a movie where this happens? And do I remember this way? And in some cases my memory was perfect. And in some cases I'm like, oh, that's not how I remember that playing out. But no, overall, I liked it. I was glad you had us watch it because I certainly would not have just watched it on a whim. It's definitely not a movie for everybody, and but I can now have a better appreciation for why my younger self liked it as much as I did when I was a kid. Like, this movie's perfect for kids. It's that's the demographic you're going for.
Even though there's some problematic elements to it, which I'm sure we're going to get to tonight.
We'll talk a little bit about that.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I figure this movie's for young kids, probably more young boys, and people who are really high, and people like us who have fond memories of it from our childhood. Like those are your people who are going to watch this and go, yeah, that was worth my 90 minutes.
Yeah, there was a lot of nostalgia in this for me. I mean, I haven't seen this thing since, probably the early 90s. Maybe I think I watched it at one point. I feel like I did, but it's been a long time. So a lot of nostalgia there. Also because I actually saw this movie in the movie theater when it came out. I was 11 years old. I went to the movie theater to see this. I remember me and my friend went to see it. One of the things I remember was the movie poster was this sort of picture of Ringo Starr and the other caveman clubbing a dinosaur. And the tagline on the poster was, "Back when you had to beat it before you could eat it." And of course, Barbara Bach is pictured in the middle in a caveman bikini straddling the dinosaur. So it was like, all these sexual innuendos are in it. So the film itself, written by Rudy DeLuca and Carl Gottlieb. Little bit of a backstory I want to go into here. So back in 1974, when he was making Jaws, Spielberg needed a writer to do script rewrites. And the studio wouldn't give him a budget for it. So he hired Carl Gottlieb as an actor. He's really a writer. And so he hired him as an actor so he'd be on set all the time. And therefore he'd always be available to do rewrites on the script. He played Harry Meadows, the local newspaper editor in Amity. Really small part. But as an actor, he was also in Johnny Dangerously. Remember I made you watch that?
I do remember you making me watch that.
He was the doctor that kept coming by to see Mama Kelly. And he's like, "Johnny, it's her liver." And they're like, "What's wrong with it?" "We can't find it." He always had these silly little lines. But anyway, so after he wrote Jaws, got a big name for himself, right? And then he wrote Jaws 2 and he wrote The Jerk with Steve Martin. He wrote Dr. Detroit as well. That's a favorite of yours, mine. So anyway, based on doing Jaws and Jaws 2 and The Jerk, he was given the chance to direct a film. So Caveman is his one and only feature film that he was the sole director for. So he did this and it was over. He directed segments of Amazon Women on the Moon from 1987. He directed the Penthouse Video and The Son of the Invisible Man, which if you've seen that movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But other than that, he was one and done as a director. So it was released in the United States on April 17th, 1981. It was made on a budget of $4 million, made it back its first weekend. And it went on to gross $15 million domestically in the US. So not a big hit. So I always like to do this. 1981, Derek, what was the number one film at the box office in 1981? Do you know?
Is it Empire Strikes Back? Or is that 1980?
That was 1980. Next year.
81. Is it something stupid like On Golden Pond?
No, close. It featured the star of Empire Strikes Back, though.
Oh, was it Raiders?
Raiders of the Lost Ark was the number one film by far. $212 million. Number 2 was On Golden Pond.
Oh, look at that. I got it.
Number 3 was Superman 2. Arthur was 4. Stripes was 5. In 6 was The Cannonball Run, followed up by Chariots of Fire. For Your Eyes Only an 8. The Four Seasons was 9. And rounding out the top 10 was a personal favorite of mine, Time Bandits, which just narrowly edged out Clash of the Titans. So Caveman, like I say, made $15 million. Not a lot. All the way down in 46th place, just ahead of Continental Divide. I like that one, though, too. So we mentioned the director, but I always like to talk a little bit about the cast. This is a very interesting cast in this movie, to say the least, I thought. So let's start with Ringo Starr. Seemed like an odd choice to be in this movie, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I imagine it was one of those things where it's like, hey, this guy has fans and can probably put bums in seats. He's obviously not known as an actor, but it's being billed as a comedy. So you're like, well, let's see what happens, right? So.
Yeah, because at the time, he'd only really been in the Beatles movies, like Help and Hard Day's Night, Yellow Submarine and stuff. Now, he was in The Magic Christian in '69 with Peter Sellers. He had a small part in Sextet with Mae West in 77, but he wasn't like a big actor, by any means. And then after this, he went on to do a lot of voice work in the 80s.
I was going to say, he did a lot of voice work.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a pretty good voice for that kind of thing.
Yeah, he did Thomas the Tank Engine in Shining Time Station. He did that forever.
Then didn't Alec Baldwin ended up taking over for him? I think
so, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Ringo Starr wasn't really an actor. He was a drummer for the Beatles. That's what he's known for. But I guess when you're the drummer for the Beatles, and that opens up a few doors for you. You can do whatever the hell you want, I guess. So he was a star in this. And then Barbara Bach. So going back to the 60s, she was one of the absolute most sought after models in the 60s. She was a Bond girl. She was in The Spy Who Loved Me with Roger Moore. And she actually tried out for Charlie's Angels in season 4. And she lost out the part to Shelley Hack, got that part instead. She posed for Playboy. By the way, I felt compelled to do the research for the podcast in this regard.
Oh, yeah.
So I did look up the pics.
Yeah. You didn't do that on your work computer, though, did you?
No, I did it on my wife was like, what the hell are you looking at? I'm like, it's research for the show, honey.
Oh,
it's
yeah, of course.
So she was in Caveman, obviously. And it was funny. When she was cast in this movie first, she was one of the first people cast. And when she found out they were going to bring in Ringo Starr, she was mad. She's like, why would you bring in a former Beatle rather than like an actual comedic actor, someone like Dudley Moore? So I'm like, why wouldn't you get somebody like that? Well, needless to say, they hit it off because they got married and they're still together to this day. so that went a lot better than we thought. The
only reason I knew that before watching this movie is in the movie Love Actually. That's one of the jokes when the Liam Neeson story with the little kid whose mom died and he's trying to learn to be a drummer and he's trying to win the girl's heart. And Liam Neeson says, he goes, drummers get all sorts of girls. He goes, Ringo Starr married a Bond girl. And the little boy just looks at him like, what's a Bond girl?
Of course. So other cast members, I want to mention Dennis Quaid. So when he did this movie, he was like not a big name or anything. He had done Breaking Away in 1979, which, by the way, was an amazing movie if you've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
It wasn't a big hit or anything, but oh God, it was good. And then he was in Gorp the year before this came out. It was a bomb. It was like they tried to make like a adult, version, R-rated version of Meatballs. It was so stupid. And then after Caveman, he went on to do Jaws 3 in 3D. Enemy Mine, he was in Inner Space and The Right Stuff. But the thing was, like, he never became a big movie star,
But he worked pretty consistently.
Very consistently over the years. But, like, never became, like, a big-time Hollywood movie star. So somebody who wanted to become a Hollywood movie star but never did was Shelley Long. And funny enough, we just reviewed Night Shift recently, and she was in that too. I found it interesting to go back and watch some of her early work because two things sort of stand out to me about her. Number one, she was actually a really good actress. Like she was a great actress. And number two, Shelley Long was beautiful. Like I think, people remember her as like, Diane Chambers. She's all stuffy and uptight and stuff. When you see her in movies like Caveman and Night Shift, like she was an attractive woman. Like I think she was almost underrated as an actress too. I think she was really talented. I liked her here. What are your thoughts on her?
Yeah, well, and we've talked about her a few times on the podcast when she's made some appearances. Growing up, I was never a fan of her because I didn't really care for her character on Cheers. And I think it's one of those situations where, you can't separate the performer from their role. And as a younger person, of course, I had a harder time doing that. But then we went back and we watched Night Shift. Yeah. And we watched this, and it's like, to your point, like she was very attractive. And I think that she just, I don't want to say got typecast, but I think she sort of fell into a groove. And I think a lot of people sort of felt like I felt. They just thought that she was that character and that may have been held against her. I don't know. She never really popped after Cheers. I mean, she was big. Like Cheers was the biggest show on TV for quite a long time. Not that she was in it in those last years, but like it certainly, I would hope, opened some doors for her. But, I always got the impression, rightly or wrongly, that she was one of these people that sort of went, well, now that I've made a name for myself on TV, I'm going to move to do movies, and then just it doesn't work, right?
Didn't work.
Not everybody can be George Clooney. You know, it's like you can't just say my show is great, I'm leaving, I'm going to be a huge movie star. Most people that try it end up like falling flat on their face. And it's like, well, unfortunately, I think she was one of those. Believe me, she did a lot of garbage. I remember seeing her in things, you know, over the years, and it's like, it's unfortunate because you look back at some of this older stuff. I mean, not that she was winning an Oscar for Caveman, don't get me wrong, but
Right.
But you could definitely see more so in the one we did a few weeks ago with Night Shift, where you could definitely see that she had talent. So
when she auditioned for this part, she refused to talk. She just grunted the whole time in her audition and ended up getting it. I want to mention John Matuszak because I liked him in everything he did. He was in One Crazy Summer, and of course he was in The Goonies. He was Sloth. And I just have to mention this. So a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago now, it was on social media. There was a bunch of people. They were all like reminiscing about the Goonies. They were in this like talk group or something. And then, you know, the conversation got around to John Matuszak and how he was Sloth and how he died young because he overdosed on painkillers. So I made a comment sort of along the lines of, I'm like, well, you know, he was probably just in a lot of pain because of all the gross disfiguration. Man, let me tell you, people jumped all over me. They're like, man, that was makeup, man. Sloth was just makeup, man. Like, do your homework. Like, jeez. Some people really take this stuff seriously, I tell you. Sarcasm's hard to do online.
No kidding. I actually remember from the movie Ice Pirates, which I watched within the last year. It was on one of those 80s throwback channels. So when I was watching Caveman, I'm like, where do I recognize this guy from? And I looked him up in the IMDb, and I was like, that's where I recognize him from, because I just watched it not too long ago. I was like, oh my God.
Wasn't that the one with Robert Urich?
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, God, I forgot about that one. Okay, so I also want to mention Jack Gilford. And the reason I want to really call him out is he was probably my favorite person in this movie. So he's been around for a long time. He got started in theater in New York back in the 30s and 40s. And he was an activist who spoke out about social injustice and stuff. So, of course, he got targeted by Joseph McCarthy in the 50s. They accused Gilford of being a communist, you know, of course. Jeez. And so he was also nominated for Best Supporting Actor in 73 for Save the Tiger. I always remember him from Cocoon.
Yeah, me too.
Like, he was good in that. And he did a lot of pantomime theater back when he was like starting back in the day. And I felt he put it to good use here in Caveman. Like, he is probably in all of my favorite scenes in this movie, which we'll get to shortly. I want to go over some of the scenes. But just the way he walks around, and he's supposed to be blind, and he's got his mouth open all the time.
Yeah.
Just like he's almost like he's not very intelligent or something. But my God, he was funny in this movie. Oh, man, I loved him in this. I don't know about you. I thought he was great.
Yeah, he was really good. I agree. I think some of the funniest parts in this movie, again, some of the most immature humor comes from him. Yeah. And those are the things I remembered the most when I was watching this. I'm like, oh, that's this part. Yeah, okay.
I want to give two quick shout outs to other cast members, too. One was Avery Schreiber. He was a comedian back in the 70s. He did a lot of TV. He was in like Sid and Marty Krofft shows like Wonderbug. And he did a lot of voiceover work. And he was the guy that was like the right hand man to Tonga, to John Matuszak. He had like he's got the big curly hair and the big mustache.
The beard. Yeah.
So he was also a semi-regular on one of my all-time favorite game shows, Match Game, because he used to sit in the top left seat whenever he was on the show. So I want to give him a shout out. But also, the other guy I want to mention is Evan C. Kim. So he was the Oriental Caveman, the only one that spoke English.
Yep.
Remember? So Derek, I just want to mention, because you mentioned recently that you watched Kentucky Fried Movie not that long ago.
Yes.
He was in that. He was in the segment called A Fistful of Yen. It was basically a mashup of like Enter the Dragon and The Wizard of Oz, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was him. So anyway,
and I recently watched him in the Deadpool, because I watched all the Dirty Harry movies, and he's the partner. He's his partner in the Deadpool. So that's where as soon as I saw him on this, I'm like, oh my God, that's that guy. So that was immediately where I remembered him from.
Want to mention the special effects, because it's 1981.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah.
And they are what they are. But I'll tell you what, I thought the special effects were great. I thought they were awesome. I thought the stop motion dinosaurs were super well done. I like how they made them goofy. And like their eyes didn't move in sync. You know, like they kind of moved independently.
They were like googly eyes.
Yeah, like a chameleon's eyes or something. I don't know. So there was a few scenes too where cavemen were on top of the dinosaur, and it was just briefly, you could see that they intercut claymation humans into the scene. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I actually paused it to look at it. And because when it happens so quickly. Yeah. If you're not paying attention, you won't realize that's what it is. But I mean, obviously, I knew that's what it was. So I backed it up and I paused it. I'm like, it was very impressive for what's essentially a silly movie. Like, they clearly put the time and effort into these special effects. They're goofy, but they're intentionally goofy, but they're great at the same time.
Yeah, like at one point, Ringo Starr is like riding the dinosaur into battle, and you can see the stop motion clay figure of Ringo in the shot. Yeah. I was like, because it's on like an HD TV. I'm watching like, oh my God, look at this. And another one that stood out to me, there was an early scene right at the beginning when the dinosaur is dragging the guy away. He pulls him out of the tree. Yes. And you can see that what they did was they've obviously filmed the actor being dragged by his leg across the frame, and they just matted in the stop motion dinosaur. But the stop motion dinosaur had a little boot in his mouth. And so they had to sync it up to the stop motion, like to the footage. So I thought it was really well done. And the thing was, I think it was even better than some of like Ray Harryhausen's work. And this came out in 1981, same year as Clash of the Titans, which came out. And that was Harryhausen. I thought the stop motion was better in Caveman than it was in Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans wasn't all that great.
I mean, I think also it's based on the genre too, right? Like Clash of the Titans was supposed to be a serious action like movie, and you know, after seeing Star Wars a couple of years earlier, then you see this stop motion animation in Clash of the Titans. It looks so goofy, but whereas in this one, it looks silly, but it's supposed to. Like, it's a comedy. It looks good, but it looks funny at the same time. Like, I think the audience, including me, is a lot more forgiving of any imperfections or things that don't line up for this movie because of the nature of the movie being so you know, childish. But at the same time, like, they really hold up. They're really good.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent special effects for what it is. And then there was a lot of practical effects in it too. Like, remember that Venus flytrap plant at the beginning? Just a bunch of hand puppets. It just wants to kiss. Exactly, it just wanted to kiss from them. Like, but I liked how, like, when they pull back, you see all the arms of the plants. It's like King Ghidorah in the old Godzilla movies or something. Like, all these kind of moving independently on wires. So I'd like that. So one note that I wrote down, I was watching this movie. And it's rather than having like a standard plot with a story, it almost seems like this whole thing is just a series of short scenes or even like sketches just to deliver a joke. Do you agree?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it definitely has that feel, but I did think they did a pretty good job of stringing them together to make a fairly cohesive story where it builds on. Like, you kept seeing Ringo Starr's character discovering things like, you know, when they get the fire and it's like, he steps on the embers. It's like, well, they're hot. And then he's like, I can use this idea to, when the monster, the dinosaur comes through, I can have it stand on this thing and it'll burn his foot and run away. Or the thing with the sleeping berries. And he's like, realizes how he can use them to make the cavemen fall asleep. Then he can use them to make the dinosaurs fall asleep. Like, I thought that even though each scene on its own was sort of, like you said, almost like a little sketch or a vignette, it did have that thread that carried it through the whole film. And I felt that the story was pretty linear and straightforward, but I think these sort of funny scenes worked themselves in, for the most part, pretty good. I think the Ice Age scene was a little bit out of place and unnecessary, but for the most part, though, I think it worked pretty well.
So the movie opens up with a date, 1 zillion BC, and then it says October 9th. Which is a tribute to John Lennon, because that was his birthday. Look that up. So, which I thought was kind of cool. I want to mention one thing that made my experience watching this kind of interesting is, I've mentioned before, sometimes I put the subtitles on my TV because my wife likes watching some of these British shows and I can't understand what they're friggin' saying. So I always got to put the subtitles on. So the subtitles were left on, and every time that they spoke using the caveman gibberish, the subtitles just said babbling. Which I thought was funny. And so we should maybe just review some of this caveman language that they use it, because there's very little, like, there's almost no English in this movie at all. There's no English dialogue.
I saw in one of the websites that I visited, it had the list. They're like, these are the 25 English words they used and what they meant. And I thought, well, I don't want to ruin the movie for myself. So
I'll give you a couple.
Yeah.
So Alunda, do you remember that? He would say like, Atuk Alunda Lana. Alunda.
Probably love, I guess.
Yes. Bobo, you remember that one? Was friend. How about Matcha?
Okay.
Especially when Avery Schreiber was kind of pantomiming to the guys about like, what happened. Matcha.
I assume it's a dinosaur.
There's a dinosaur, yep. Yeah. Puka was where they used for like injured or sick. Mm-hmm. How about Ool? You remember that one? Ool.
No.
Ool was food. Haraka was fire. How about the Zug Zug?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the only one I remembered was Zug Zug with sex.
Sex. And then Kaka.
Well, I assume that means
it does. Yeah, that's right. It does. So what do you say we talk about some of the scenes in the movie that stood out? So one that I liked that was kind of a recurring joke was the dinosaur baying at the moon. And then in the morning, it's like a rooster and stuff like that. I thought that made me laugh. I thought it was pretty funny. But let's just get this out of the way. I guess I'll call it the sexual assault scene, for lack of a better term. So you mentioned Ringo discovers these berries. Looks like they're on a pot plant or something. I don't know. But they use him as a guinea pig to eat them, and it makes him pass out, right? So he takes a bunch of them, decides to use them basically as roofies so that he can sexually assault Barbara Bach. So he puts them inside a piece of fruit and he feeds them to her. And then her and John Matusak, Lana and Tonda, they both eat them. And once they both pass out, he tries to spread apart her legs and mount her. And like, okay, I know it was the 80s. I know it's a comedy about prehistoric times, but I mean, but it's like, it's played for laughs.
I was going to say it's played for laughs, and it is very cringy by today's standards.
Yeah.
And, but I think they sort of, on some levels, realized that it wasn't acceptable because they even have that like the bodies are just not cooperating. Then when they both roll over and the guy farts, like they're trying to make light of the scene, which is not to forgive it, but that was sort of my impression was, okay, they're not gonna let them get to a point where this is going to be an assault, and I think that was it. Like, I don't think we're supposed to believe that anything ever happened. I think it was he just gave up and they all passed out.
Yeah, exactly. It does, but I mean, like, but the thing is, it's all happening up on this pedestal in the middle of the cave, so everyone else could see them.
Yeah.
And the thing was, it was set to the tune of Bolero, like, you know, and like you mentioned, like he goes to jump her finally, and she moves, so he's humping the rock, and then Tonda grabs him, if you remember, and he thinks that Ringo is Barbara Bach, and grabs Ringo and makes him straddle him.
That I actually laughed at.
Yeah, and Ringo pretends he's got breasts and stuff. So then Tonda wakes up and freaks out, right, and kicks him out of the cave. But the thing was, too, if you think about it, was he trying to, like, was he upset because Ringo was trying to bang Lana? No. He's upset because he mistook him for a woman. So first it's a sexual assault joke, and then it's like this homophobic joke. I'm like, I know the 80s were a different time, but that whole scene, I don't know. If you would have removed that whole scene, the rest of the movie would have been, like, good for kids almost.
Yeah.
You know, like funnier for kids. I don't know. Set that aside, though. The rest of the movie, for me, was actually a good, funny little movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot more. Like I said at the top, I liked it a lot more than I was expecting to. But I think a lot of it was the nostalgia factor, the memory of just watching it as a little kid and sort of trying to imagine myself as a 9-year-old kid watching this again and putting myself in that mindset. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting to. Hands
down, my favorite scene in the whole movie. When it's just Jack Gilford goes like wandering off because he's blind, and he walks under the T-Rex and he reaches up and he feels this lump in the dinosaur's crotch, and it's clearly supposed to be its like genital area, and he starts stroking it, and the dinosaur closes its eyes and its tongue's hanging out, and then all of a sudden, for no reason at all, he just hauls off and like whacks it with his cane. I was laughing my head off. I don't know why that made me laugh. It's very juvenile, but God, that was funny.
In my mind, that was the one scene that I absolutely remember crystal clear from being a little kid, because I remember seeing that as a kid and just like, that's little kid humor. Like
it is.
You know, it's like Jackass. Boys think Jackass is hilarious. You watch someone else get hit in the nuts, that's funny. And when it's a dinosaur in this circumstance, that's double funny.
Especially when it goes from like pleasure to pain in a split second, and for no reason at all. I don't know why Jack Gilford does this.
I think that's partly why it's so funny. Is it's just so unexpected.
Yeah, I know. And then a little bit later, Jack Gilford has that scene where he's like doing the breast feeling. Remember, he's in the cave and there's like these two female cave women, and he's blind, right? So he feels like one breast from the one woman, one breast from the other, and he can't figure out why there's no head in the middle. And then he finally figures it out.
That I did not remember, and man, did I laugh.
Oh, God, I was like, what is going on here? And then obviously all the back cracking that was going on, I thought was kind of a funny running gag when Ringo and Dennis Quaid are like running toward each other, because Dennis Quaid hurt his foot.
Right.
And so he's like hopping. And then for whatever reason, I don't know why, Ringo Starr is hopping too toward him. And then they hug, and then that's when they crack their backs and they can walk sort of upright, you know. So there was that. And then he's talking to Dennis Quaid about sort of the plot of the film, if you will, that he wants to go back and get Barbara Bach. And he draws the stick figure in the sand with the big boobs.
Yeah.
And then I like how Lar draws the stick figure of Atuk, Ringo, and gives him a big nose. Did you notice that? I was like,
notice
that. I'm like, oh my God. So that was pretty funny. And then right around that same time, there was that mosquito that lands on his face.
Yeah. And that was the scene I remembered quite clearly. I think this is where he squishes it on his face. He's like, yeah.
I like how you can totally tell it's like this plastic drone thing with these mechanical. You can see it's plastic, right? And then he just tries to flick it, like as if. And like you say, he just crushes it in his face. What comes out looks like, I don't know, a mixture of mayonnaise and ketchup and mustard all kind of mixed together. It was so gross. So, any other scenes stand up to you? I got a couple more too.
I like the very end scene where he finally gets the girl and he lifts her up and then he just drops her in the giant pile of poop. I thought that was just a great ending. And you're watching the movie and the whole time you just keep thinking, why are you putting yourself through this for this? I mean, I get that the woman is super attractive, but I'm like, you're putting yourself and all your friends at danger. There's this other woman here who's, just as beautiful, who clearly is interested in you. And it's like, so you knew by the end it was going to come around. But even when I was watching this one, I was like, he can't end up with her at the end, does he? And then, because I forgot that he drops her in the poop, and I was like, oh, that's right. And of course, as soon as he did it, I remembered. But yeah, no, it was. I thought it was a good end to it.
So a couple other scenes when they discover music. So the one little guy gets it going. He's like blowing in a bowl. And they all add things together. I really wished that they would have had everyone doing something and it just cuts to Ringo on like a set of drums made out of rocks, maybe a little bit too on the nose. I don't know, but they didn't do it, right? Everybody contributes something to the song. And of course, my favorite, Jack Gilford.
Yeah.
He puts his hand in the fire and he's like, and he just keeps putting it in like it's a verse in the song.
But didn't someone else grabbed his arm and kept doing it?
Oh, maybe that was the first time he did it, and then they did that. I looked like he was just putting it back in. One thing about that song, though, the song that they all sing totally reminded me of the Ewok song.
Yes.
At the end of Return of the Jedi,
That's
right?
what I kept thinking too. I was like, but this came out before Jedi, so
2 years before. This is before George Lucas went and ruined the end of Jedi, like the original Ewok song. That's what I thought of. Like, oh my God, that was. And the one song that just keeps going through the movie was nostalgic to me, and it was like, and it really stands out. It was like dun 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 dun, and I was like, oh my God, there was just something about it that just was very familiar. Mm-hmm. Another thing I want to mention was that they find that giant egg. It's like a dinosaur egg, or pterodactyl egg or something. And they go to carry it away, and they're whistling the Colonel Bogey March from Bridge on the River Kwai. There was a lot of well-known songs throughout the movie, because there was Bolero from the sex scene. At one point, I think they were playing the William Tell Overture. So
yes.
But I like how they they're carrying the egg and they get tired. So they set it down and the it's under the egg. They don't know where he is. Mm-hmm. Well, again, totally un-PC. And then the bad guys are just chasing them around the egg like it's like a cartoon or something like that. That scene when they drop it, though, and it cooks the egg in the hot spring, like it's all sunny side up, they go to eat it, and it's like foam. But then they decide to rip pieces of it off and take it home, and it looks like big pieces of plastic or something.
Well, and I like
that was just foam minutes ago. What the hell is it? It struck me as being kind of interesting.
Well, and I like that the giant pieces they took away all had like yolk in the middle and white around the edges. So it was almost like the prop department didn't really explain the scene very well. They're just like, we need they're taking this giant egg away. And the people making the small pieces didn't talk to the people who did the big piece. So again, it's a small little detail. I'm not going to get hung up on it.
One scene I didn't quite understand a whole bunch. Like they come across this big pile of dinosaur dung and then they can't find the and they think he's in the dung pile. So they start rooting through it. They're like trying to find him. And then he just all of a sudden comes walking out like as if he just went to the bathroom. So they're like get mad at him and they throw him in it. Yeah. I'm like, why? What did he do? Like, he didn't deserve that. That whole scene seemed a little odd to me. So,
well, again, I think it's you're playing to that 9-year-old boy audience, right? It's like poop jokes. They're always funny.
Throw him into poop. Like the whole movie, like I said, it's like sight gag after sight gag.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, there's no cohesive plot. I guess there was the cohesive plot. He's going back to try and get Barbara Bach, but it's just joke after joke after joke.
But one of the things that really, that I, after watching it again, that I really liked is the fact that there was no dialogue. It's essentially a silent movie, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no comprehensive dialogue, and there doesn't need to be. It's all visual. It's like you said, it's sight gags and visual jokes and pantomime. And for 90 minutes, like you got to think like, wow, is this going to work for this long? And it did. I thought it worked great. And I think that's a real compliment to the movie that it was able to carry it through. And there was never any point in the movie where I was watching going, I don't understand why they're doing this. I don't understand what's happening here. Like it was very clear. And I think it worked really well.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ice Age scene, and it was a little disconnected from the film. When they were outside there with the little river that was going on, I was like, it's like totally fake rock. It looked like the mountain at Canada's Wonderland. You know what I mean?
It didn't look that good.
Yeah. And then at one point I was thinking when they went inside, I'm like, it kind of looks like the set from the Fortress of Solitude from Superman 2. I don't know if they borrowed some of it.
I was thinking Logan's Run, the end of Logan's Run.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that was it. Thinking. Yeah. Another thing, too, that stood out to me. Before I watched the movie this week, I was like trying to think about this movie. I'm like, okay, what do I remember about it? Because it's like been a long time. And then having watched it this week, I realized I was getting a lot of it confused with the beginning of Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1.
Which I haven't seen in a long time. But
there's a whole caveman sequence with like Sid Caesar. And there were scenes from that I thought were in this and vice versa. So I was getting them a bit mixed up. So you mentioned at when the movie ends, there's that big, kind of fight sequence. They go back to try and, take over. For me, the best part, of course, Jack Gilford, he's just swinging and missing at people the whole time. I said that was funny. Yeah. And then, of course, like you said, Ringo finally gets Barbara Bach, but then, really goes with Shelley Long. But the thing was, it wasn't even because, he realizes he loves Shelley Long. It's because in the middle of the fight, Barbara Bach starts fighting against him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I guess him and Shelley Long finally get to Zug. So there's that. So before we rate the movie, I looked into this. Rotten Tomatoes gave the film an approval rating of 33% with an average rating of 4.7 out of 10. Metacritic gave the film a score of 55%, and Roger Ebert back in the day reviewed the movie and gave it 1.5 stars out of 4.
Wow, 1.5. That's better than I would have expected.
Oh, really? Okay, so rate the movie out of 10 for me. What would you give it?
Give it a 6 or 6.5. I'm going to say a 6. I think if you have a connection to it from your childhood, you maybe bump it to a 6.5, but I'm going to go with a 6.
Very good.
A loving 6.
Yeah, very good, because I'd written the number I wrote down was 6 as well. So yeah, I think it deserves a 6 out of 10. It's good. It's not great, but it's fun. I would be interested to know, from a perspective of somebody who's never seen this movie before. There's no nostalgic factor to it, what they think of it.
Yeah.
That would be interesting because, for us, we've got this nostalgic, piece, But if you didn't have the nostalgic piece, would it be as funny or not? Or would they enjoy it as much? Probably not, I guess. You know, but anyway, on that note, what do you say we have some
fun with Caveman?
All right, my man, it is my movie, so that means it's over to you. What trivia do you have for us this week?
Well, I'm gonna quiz you on a lot of things that have to do with Dennis Quaid.
Okay.
I was gonna do a whole thing about like musicians in movies, but I realized I did that trivia for you with a previous movie a while back. It was in my because I keep all the old trivias. I don't remember, but I keep all the trivia questions in like a folder. Mm-hmm. And when I went back and I was like, hey, here it is right here. Musicians in movies. So I'm like, well, we can't do that one again. So I figure, let's talk about Dennis Quaid. So it was interesting. You mentioned during the show that he never really became like an A-lister superstar.
Yeah, he never did. Yeah.
But when I looked at his IMDb, oh my God, this guy has worked steadily his entire career, like multiple projects per year for 35 or 40 years. Like this guy has never slowed down whatsoever. And believe me, the ratings on a lot of his newer movies are not fantastic, but he did a lot of stuff. So anyway, I tried to stick to just movies you'd be a little more familiar with, or that at least were a little more popular. Mm-hmm. And I've basically grouped it into three categories. I'm going to ask you first, I'm going to ask you about movies that he made that fall into the science fiction and fantasy category. Then I'm going to ask you questions about his sports movies. And then finally, I'm going to ask you questions about movie remakes that he has participated in. And in each case, we're just going to go with our standard tried and true formula. I'll give you the plot synopsis and the date, and you name the movie. Okay. They all star Dennis Quaid, and they're going to be one of these three categories. So we're going to start with the sci-fi and fantasy ones. Okay.
Sure.
All right. And again, sci-fi fantasy loosely. Some are like right on the nose, and some are just sort of tangentially sci-fi. So anyway, the first one's from 1987. A test pilot is miniaturized in a secret experiment and accidentally injected into a hapless store clerk.
That was Inner Space, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was recently on one of the 80s channels. My wife was watching it. So.
Oh, nice.
All right. This one's from 1985. During a long space war, the lives of two wounded enemies become dependent on their ability to forgive and to trust.
I mentioned that one. I've seen parts of it before, and it was Enemy Mine.
Yes. Yeah, it's a really good
Lou Gossett Jr. was really good in that, I remember.
He was really good. Did we do that one on this show?
We did not, no.
I thought we had.
I've seen parts of it, but I've never seen the whole thing. So
that's really good. I watched it recently. It holds up well. All right. From 2004... Jack Hall, I'm going to say this wrong, paleoclimatologist, must make a daring trek from Washington, D.C. to New York City to reach his son, trapped in the crosshairs of a sudden international storm which plunges the planet into a new ice age.
So I actually saw this in the movie theater on a date once. It's called The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's like Jake Gyllenhaal. Right?
Yeah, he played the son. Yeah, I've probably seen this movie a dozen times. They show it on TV all the time. Yep. All right. This one's from 2000. An accidental cross-time radio connects father and son across 30 years. The son tries to save his father's life, but then must fix the consequences.
I don't know that one.
This one is called Frequency. And
I don't think I've ever even heard of it.
It's quite good. And I haven't seen it since 2000, but the son is played by, I think his name's Jim Caviezel, the guy who was Jesus in the Passion of the Christ.
He
plays the son. Yeah. He was in that series, Person of Interest. He was the main guy in that. Okay. In any case, next one, 1996. Okay. The last dragon and a disillusioned dragon-slaying knight must cooperate to stop an evil king who was given partial immortality.
That was Dragonheart.
Yes.
Right? That was where Sean Connery did the voice.
I was supposed to say, bonus points if you can identify the dragon. Yeah, Sean Connery.
Yeah, Sean Connery was the dragon. I remember that.
All right. That should not be here. And then the last one I've got here in this sci-fi fantasy category from 1984. A man who can enter and manipulate people's dreams is recruited by a government agency to help cure the president of the United States of his nightmares about nuclear war. but stumbles upon an assassination plot.
Wasn't it called Dreamscape?
Yes, it was. Yeah. No, it was good too. So a lot of these ones are like sort of bordering on that guilty pleasure. They're like, these movies weren't fantastic, but they're a lot of fun. So, all right, we're going to move to sports movie. You did really well on those, by the way. Okay, we're going to move to Dennis Quaid sports movies. He's done quite a few, and some of them are pretty good. All right, this first one is quite recent, from just a few years ago, from 2021. He's not the main star. Obviously, he's getting a little older. He's not going to be a main star of a sports movie. 2021. This movie is the story of NFL MVP and Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner, who went from stocking shelves at a supermarket to becoming an American football star.
I don't know.
Movie's called American Underdog.
Okay.
It's got the guy who played Shazam. He's the football guy in this one. It was pretty good too. I watched this when it first came out. All right. From 1999. Again, ensemble piece, not the main guy. A behind the scenes look at the life and death struggles of modern day gladiators and those who lead them.
I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. The gladiators are, speaking of, are football players. Does that help you?
Was it with Pacino at Any Given Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah,
I needed the clue there.
I
Gladiators threw me off.
reference football in the description. It surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. I've actually never seen this one. It's from 2008. A drama based on the life of college football hero Ernie Davis, the first African-American to win the Heisman Trophy.
No idea.
I believe he plays the coach. The movie's called The Express.
Okay.
All right. This one's from 1988, probably a little more in your wheelhouse. A Louisiana football legend struggles to deal with life's complexities after his college career is over.
And that was from what year?
88.
Was that the one he did with Jessica Lange? I can't remember the name of it, though.
Don't know. I've never seen it.
It was like All-American or something like
Very
that.
close. Yeah, it's called Everybody's All-American. I'll give you that.
I get it? Okay.
Yeah, we'll give you that one for sure.
Nice.
All right, the last
Very
one I
kind
got
of
on
you.
my list. This one, I'd be surprised if you have not seen this one. It's from 2002.
Okay.
A Texas baseball coach makes the major leagues after agreeing to try out if his high school team made the playoffs.
So I've heard of it and I saw it, and it's The Rookie, right?
It is The Rookie.
Yes. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen the movie. Like I've seen lots about it. So
yeah, it was good. I remember seeing it in the theater, and then I think my brother got the DVD for Christmas one year, so we popped it in a few times. All right, you did good. You're doing very well on these, by the way. All right, last category is remakes. I'm going to give you 5 movies that are remakes of. We'll put this in quotes. Classics. The new ones all star Dennis Quaid. I will give you the name of the performer from the original that played the same role as an extra.
Interesting. Oh, boy.
Okay, because some of the originals go way back.
All right.
Okay. So the remake was in 1988. The original is from 1949.
Okay.
I'll give you the description, and then if you don't get it, I'll give you the name of the performer that he's took the part of.
Sure.
Okay, so 88 is the new one, 49 is the original. A college professor's day. His top student allegedly commits suicide. His wife presents him with divorce papers, and he overnights in a freshman girl's dorm. The next day, more murder around him. Will he find the killer in time?
I don't know.
The original performer that starred in it was someone named Edmund O'Brien.
Doesn't help me any.
The movie was DOA, Dead on Arrival. It's basically poisoned.
Seems familiar.
And you have a day to figure this out because you're going to be dead tomorrow.
Sounds familiar. Sounds a little familiar. I don't think I've never seen
that. Was the hardest one. These are going to get easier as we go.
Oh, good.
I started with the hardest one.
I like
okay. This one I'm sure you'll get. Okay. So the remake is from 1998.
Okay.
The original was from 1961. The performer that had the same role was an actor named Brian Keith. And I'll read you the description, which you will get in a second. Let me finish the whole thing, though.
I think I've got a guess on this.
All right. Well, let me read the description
Already.
So,
but yeah, give me the description.
identical twins,
Yeah,
Annie and
yeah,
Haley, separated at birth and each raised by one of their biological parents, discover each other for the first time at summer camp and make a plan to bring their wayward parents back together.
It's The Parent Trap.
It is The Parent Trap. Yeah.
I remember Brian Keith from Sharky's Machine, and yes, he was in the original. Yep, that's right.
All right. So the next one, the remake is from 2004.
Ugh, okay.
The original was from 1965. And in the original, the role was played by Jimmy Stewart. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
This is the description. Survivors of a plane crash in the Mongolian desert work together to build a new plane.
I don't know about the remake, but the original with Jimmy Stewart was Flight of the Phoenix, right?
Yeah, that's it. Flight of the Phoenix.
Okay. I don't even know that they made a remake.
Well, they did.
But I'm familiar with the original. Okay.
All right. So this one, the new one is in 2005. The original is from 1968. Mm-hmm. And the original performer that played the same role was Henry Fonda.
Ooh.
Okay. So 2005 is the new one.
Okay.
1968 is the old one, Henry Fonda. Okay. Here's the description. A widowed Coast Guard admiral and a widowed handbag designer fall in love and marry, much to the dismay of his 8 and her 10 children.
Oh my God. I have no idea.
It's called Yours, Mine, and Ours.
Oh, I never would have got that.
Apparently the original's a classic. So I can remember it was a big deal at Blockbuster. They kept trying to pump that one out. Okay, the last one. This is a nice, easy one you should have no problem with. Okay. The remake is from 2011.
Okay.
The original is from 1984.
84 I like. That's in my wheelhouse.
And in the original, the character was played by John Lithgow.
Okay.
Okay. And let me get through the whole description because you're going to get it right away.
Okay.
City teenager Ren McCormick moves to a small town where rock music and dancing have been banned, and his rebellious spirit shakes up the populace.
So they kept his name on the remake of Ren McCormick. For some reason, when you said 84, played by
John Lithgow.
By Lithgow, I was thinking The World According to Garp. And I'm like, they never remade that, but that is 100% Footloose.
Yes. Yeah, Dennis Quaid plays the religious, no dancing in my town. Yeah. So
Ren McCormick. Oh my God, dude, that name is so sort of iconic from the 80s. So all right, so that's all of them. I didn't do too bad.
You did really good. You got
considering,
almost all of them.
That was
really good.
I thought, but okay. So this I picked Caveman, and which is ironic because you are a caveman.
I have been called that from time to time. Yes.
Affectionately, of course. So I picked this movie. We watched it. We reviewed it. So that means it's over to you to pick a movie for me to watch and come back next week for us to review. What movie would you like for me to watch, my friend?
All right. I was toying with giving you a modern drama Oscar contender. And then I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to take you back to 1985 for a goofy comedy.
We're going to go way back.
We're going to go to 85 for a nice goofy comedy that I happened to. It was on Turner Classics a few weeks ago. I recorded it, and we're going to go and we're going to watch Richard Pryor in Brewster's Millions.
Oh wow, I like it. Brewster's Millions. Love it.
We got John Candy. And Jerry Orbach.
Yes. He was the coach of the Hackensack Bulls, I believe.
Yeah. Yep. So. I haven't seen Brewster's Millions in probably.
It's been a long time, but I remember I really enjoyed it. So
I do remember liking it a lot. So I'm looking forward to going back and having a reason to watch it again this week. And we'll come back next week and we'll review Brewster's Millions, yet another remake. Speaking of all the remakes,
because that was a remake of a previous film. So that's good. Very interesting because usually I give us the old movies, you do the newer stuff, but you're taking us back, which I like. We can go back anytime. Anytime you want to go back to the 80s and watch them, I'm always good for that. Okay, so until then, I'm Chris McBrien. I want to say thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World on behalf of myself and Derek Myers. It's Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.